episode of Outside the Panel with your host, Johnny the Machine Hughes.
Welcome everyone to another episode of Outside the Panels. I am your host, as always, Johnny the Machine Hughes, and joining me for this episode, adults beware, adult chat coming, lock your kids up potentially. We have the maestro of so many comic books, Stjepan Sejic.
Come on, you got this. Close enough.
That's what I'm going with.
Close enough.
For the listeners, Stjepan and I have been talking for the last hour, and that's how good it got. So that's how good it was. So, how are you, man? I've been wanting to talk to you for like the longest time. I am an absolutely huge fan.
Oh, I've been keeping myself absurdly, insanely, mind-crushingly busy these days. So, business as usual.
You are a bit of a Twitter fiend, it has to be said.
Oh yeah, there was once a time in my life when I was like, Twitter, why would you ever want to use that? It's like just and then they were like, we're gonna duplicate we're gonna double the amount of letters you can use. I'm like, sold.
Yeah, those letters. Cool, excellent. So, for those that do not know who you are, that have potentially been living under a rock, my summary would include things like Witchblade. Correct?
Fair enough. Yeah.
Sunstone.
Yep.
Mercy.
Yep.
Justice League Odyssey.
Mm-hmm.
Suicide Squad.
Yep.
A host of DC covers.
Yep.
Helping out on Swing.
Not really, no. I was just there kind of in a sort of an editorial role.
I was going to say your name's on the credits. So.
Yeah. I was in a kind of an editorial role, as in quality check. It had to go past me.
Okay, and that sums up. Is there anything that I've missed there? I think there was a tie-in for a video game as well.
There's Death Vigil. There's a whole lot of work for a whole lot of companies, and be it comics, video games. I've been in everything really at this point.
So. How did you break into comics? Let's start at the top. And work our way down.
How did I break into comics? Well, like anything else, it's a matter of just sheer stubbornness and persistency. For me personally, the moment I discovered that I could do things digitally and post my stuff online, that's what opened the doors for me. Well, it didn't really open them, but it kind of eked them a little bit for me just to be able to peek into the industry, And from there on, it was a matter of persistently posting my stuff online until my work was noticed by Tyler Kirkham, who was back then working for Top Cow. And at the same time, I had a few other things going on, but predominantly my big entrance was with him as a colorist for his work on Darkness Wolverine, which was a crossover thing that Top Cow had with Marvel at the time. Mm-hmm. And as I was coloring that, everybody at Top Cow was really impressed, and I sent my editor at Top Cow at that point, Renee Gerlings, a few of my pieces, and she was stunned. She was like, "Wait, you can actually draw?" She's like, "Can you draw Witchblade?" I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "We need actually a fill-in for 3 issues. Do you think you could handle that on a monthly schedule?" I'm like, "No problem." And from there on, that's what got the ball rolling and never stopped ever since.
Okay. So, colorist, digital. Okay.
Yeah.
So, do you find that, I personally think that the greatest change in comic books over the last 20 years, maybe a little bit longer, is the digital coloring. Do you feel that that's kind of made books?
Oh yeah, it has opened a lot of doors to a lot of visual approaches to comics. Because initially, like if you wanted to color your comics, you were pretty much limited to traditional painting, and then you were at the mercy of the printing process, whether or not it's going to capture it or not. During the 90s, during the big explosion of digital coloring, where things really started getting, cranking it up to the next level.
So that's like Malibu Comics, wasn't it? When Image.
Yeah, and like during those days, like people's eyes were open to all this array of things you could achieve with coloring, because before that, coloring was effective, but it was relatively simple, And ever since then, people have kind of started experimenting. It's like, what can you do with digital colors? Like from personal examples, from the earliest days, like I've been kind of trying to figure out the tools of my trade, in a very specific way, in a way that works for me. And that resulted in a very unique approach to coloring. Like there are people who, for instance, will color things very technically, very precise, and it's always going to be like within the lines. Now, people who are familiar with my own work, they'll notice that I'm very sloppy with my coloring, but at the same time, very effective. Like I know what I need it to look like, and I don't need it to look perfect. And that's the big effect of coloring, and the options that we have with it nowadays is you can create amazing visual material with an intense sense of mood, atmosphere to it, which it was kind of hard when you had kind of 4 colors back in the day.
I remember, to catch on a couple of things, I remember reading why Alan Davis, the artist on Excalibur back in the day, left the book twice, and it was because of the colouring process. As for your comments of being a sloppy colorist, I think that adds texture to everything.
Yeah.
So
I'm a big proponent of. I'm not trying to make things look perfect. I'm trying to make it look right.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest things you have to master in this line of work, in any kind of professional artistic industry, is you got to know when to call it done. Not perfect, not flawless, but done.
I have problems with that with my art, because I'm a bit of a doodler, as everybody probably who's in the comics is. But I'll draw the pencils, I'll do the layout, and then I'll try and tighten up with inks, and it'll just go wrong. I just can't stop.
Yeah. That there's a lot of things that can go wrong during that transition from sketching a doodle to a finished piece, and one of the most dangerous ones is that your artwork just tends to lose its soul in the process.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right, so from Witchblade to covers to more esoteric things, which came first? Did Sunstone come first, or I think that it did, in relation to the big popular books that people will know about?
No, Sunstone. Like, here's the thing: I get asked often whether or not Sunstone was in any way inspired by popularity of 50 Shades of Grey. No, I live in Croatia back then. For us, we didn't even know what 50 Shades of Grey was. Sunstone was a
colorist. Everybody.
Yeah, Sunstone was a result. Sunstone was a result of a massive artistic burnout. See, through my early days of comics work, I tended to make comics the way I thought people wanted them to be. I kind of always leaned towards kind of embracing influences from my past, from be it Mark Sylvester, be it Michael Turner, be it Alex Ross. And during all that time, I had my own natural style. I had my own artistic handwriting, so to say, but I kept repressing it over years and years and years of work, because, I was kind of trying to do a thing that I thought was going to sell. But the problem was, the more I did that, the less soul there was in my work. So, my work became progressively worse. And I kind of at some point hit a brick wall and just kind of decided to completely give up on everything pretty much. And before I got into comics in America, I was offered to do a European porn comic. And for somebody, who was never paid for, comic work and really wanted to do comics professional, like that was like the dream. Oh my God, I'm going to get paid, and we were dirt poor here. So, the money that they offered was like, mind blowing to me. And I remember I never had as much passion for my work as I did that time, because I felt like, I'm going to do this. I'm going to get paid for this. I'm going to help my family. Like, this is amazing. Like, I was on fire. And then at the same time, that's when Tyler Kirkham approached me to color his work. I'm like, wow, I actually have an actual opening. So I kind of switched to that and decided to go with that.
All right, okay.
But when I had my burnout, I was like, what, where did I lose my fire? Where did I lose my creative drive?
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of tried to, rekindle, like, tried to remember, like, when was the last time I truly felt it? And I remembered doing that comic. I'm like, fuck it. I turned to my wife. And I'm like, you know what, honey? I'm gonna start a new DeviantArt account. I'm gonna make a stupid name on it, and I'm just gonna do like fetishistic, pin-up pieces and little jokes and stuff like that. Like nothing serious, just something as a vent, for me to actually kind of get myself, actually drawing again.
Yeah.
And I started. And then I started writing jokes, and then these characters started talking to me, and I'm like, "Oh shit, it's happening again, isn't it? It's like I'm gonna make this into a book."
Excellent.
But the difference between this and any other of my work was this was done in a way that I wanted to do it, like in my own natural style. It wasn't me imitating somebody else's handwriting; like I was just drawing it the way I would draw it.
Yeah.
And from there on, people gravitated towards it, and here we are. It's a freaking New York Times bestseller. It's got nominations for awards. It's published in so many languages that I can't even keep track of it anymore.
Wow, I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head for me. There's a whole bunch of comic artists out there who I always think try to maintain like a house style. The Zenescope guys and girls, for example, sometimes I have to go back and check to see is the name any different when I'm doing the reviews because it looks so similar. And I think there are times when people will take on a house style to try and appease the fans or appease a publisher. I'm glad you broke out because when I loved some of the Top Cow books that I'd seen. I reviewed Sunstone. Way back when that came out for Comic Crusaders, and I absolutely love the book. I tell everybody when I talk about the book, because I talk about it a lot to a lot of my friends, I tell them it's a love story. Everything else is just kind of smoke and mirrors. Is that a fair assessment?
Oh yeah, Sunstone is 100%. It's a romance. It's a slice of life story. It's a slice of life story, but like with any slice of life story, you're writing about characters with certain interests, and in this case, their interest, their hobby is BDSM, and I often make that a point. Like, make no mistake, it's a hobby. You spend a lot of time talking about it. You spend a lot of times just wasting your time with it, having fun with it, and you spend exorbitant amounts of money on it. So it's a hobby, and that's the interesting part. Is like this is what made people understand it because of the way I structured and I framed the whole thing. They understood it, even people who are not into that, and especially people who are not into that started gravitating towards the book because they were like, you know what? Like, I'm not into this, but I get it now,
It's you talked about your colours being a slice of life. I think every time I read Sunstone once every 3 months or so because it's that engrossing, and every time I read it, there's something else. It's the relationship, regardless of whether put the BDSM stuff and the bondage stuff and the lesbians or just two people or whatever you want to call them. Put that to one side. At the bottom end of this book, it is two people falling for each other and having the insecurities that everybody has in real life about meeting up and about taking that next step.
Yeah, that's the whole point of every single arc of Sunstone. There's going to be 3 main story arc plus some additional books at the end. But the point of every single one of them is to tell its own love story, its own complex romance with its own very unique and very specific problems, to deal with. So Ali and Lisa, they have their own story with their own problems. Alan and Anne, they have their own very complex story, very layered, and their own very unique problems. And same is going to be with Marion and Jasper later. Marion and James later on in Jasper's story arc. So it's one of those things. Is when I first got into it, like. Just as I finished the first chapter online as a webcomic, I started panicking because my previous project that I was writing was Ravine. and that was an epic fantasy, And at some point, like at the end of the first chapter, I was like, I'm writing a romance. Like, I don't know how to write a romance. Like, what is this?
Did you have to go out and do some research?
No, it's not that. The point is, I do know how to write a romance, because let's be honest, if you've been in a relationship, you've experienced your own romance, If you've talked to other people, like you've heard about their romance, like what a romance is, the problems that you have with one, and that's the interesting part. Like that's when I understood. It's like, well, that's the meat and bones of it. It's not just about the fluff, but it's about the underlying problems. It's about relationships aren't easy. They're not clean. They're a mess, And then how do you capture that? And that's when I understood that I have to make Sunstone. That at that point is like, yeah, okay, no, I'm not gonna panic. I'm just gonna do the thing, because I am not kidding. At a certain point, as I was about to start chapter 2, I'm like, okay, but what if Lisa finds an alien artifact in some antique shop, and that's actually from not even kidding. Like it was supposed to involve like a galactic empire, and the galactic emperor whose dominant thoughts can subdue entire planets. But then Ali gets a hand of one of their devices and actually starts countering alien invaders with her own dominance, and fucking it goes to space to war, because that's how panicky I was about the concept of myself writing a romance. I was at the beginning of chapter 2 thinking, okay, but how do I turn this into a space opera? I'm not kidding. Like that, Sunstone was not only is the story wild, but the story of its creation is just as wild.
Yeah, the bits that in Sunstone that kind of resonate, it's that initial meeting, that whole recognizing that there's something between the two. When Ali has a breakdown in the club, when they're telling the story about one of her past relationships, and they have their kind of moment in the bathroom, I was like, wow, that is just so well nuanced. It's so well observed. It just works, because you're absolutely right. Write what you know, and everybody knows. Everyone's been in love. Everyone's had that relationship. So no, absolutely, kudos to you, man. It was an absolutely fantastic read. Absolutely great. So well done. And of course, the I'm not going to lie. The outfits look great. More fishnets.
Oh yeah,
more fishnets.
Yeah, I mean,
that's my critique. For those that listen to the show regularly, they know I've got a fishnet thing, so there you go. I'll get that out there now. There's my request. Right, so we've talked about the relationship element. There are going to be people that will buy Sunstone for the more obvious
of course.
Of it. You're absolutely
my
right.
my wife often refers to it as the booby trap, as in they're like, oh, there's gonna be boobies, and then they're trapped with the story. I'm like,
yeah, that's true. Well, talking of that, I mean, your wife's had Swing out recently, and Volume 2 is coming out soon as well, isn't it? So she has her own booby trap going on there, I'm afraid, my friend.
Oh yeah, she is quite competent at that.
I'm not touching that line. I'm just going to leave that there. All right.
No, like she's legit as competent as in drawing these kinds of and writing these kinds of things as I am.
Okay.
Like we're two very weird people. That's why we don't have a lot of friends.
Cool. What was I going to say? So for some of the more esoteric outfits that Ali and Lisa find themselves in, as do some of their cohorts and partners and friends and whatnot. Research? Did you have to do a lot of it?
I mean, no, not at all. My wife and I have been practitioners of this stuff for a long time. Like this, that whole write what you know. Well, we know quite a bit about this, and we have a bunch of friends who are into this and have been into this for a long time. Right. So we had our pool of research material, inspiration, and all of that.
Right. So you've just opened the door. So I would be remiss as an interviewer, if as a practitioner and with friends of the same hobbies, then are the characters based on anyone loosely that you know?
No, not even loosely. No, I actively avoid that for very obvious reasons. First of all, you don't want people to point out, oh, that's you or that's him or that's her. I basically summarized it all to that whole notion of that sex is inherently funny, and it is. Like if done right, like there's so much potential for humor, for adorable stuff, for funny stuff, and for sexy stuff, And with BDSM, you have sex with props. It's like pratfalls are gonna happen all the fucking time, And it's at that point, it's just it writes itself, really.
It's not called bumping uglies for a reason.
Exactly.
Okay. Who's your favorite character then? Ali or Lisa?
Ali.
Ali, not Anne. Ali. Ali's your favorite.
Ali is my favorite.
Yeah. All right. Okay.
Although currently Anne is getting up there. Just because of the storyline of Mercy and how things are progressing. Like she's now becoming. Well, I mean, it's natural, of course. Ali's story has been predominantly written. Like she is, like you've seen that. Like, and now I'm really heart and soul invested into Alan and Anne's thing, and with Anne, I get to explore so much now in this story arc that it's she grew near and dear to me. I
like how Ali's the linchpin to it all.
Yeah,
so it's kind of there's that element in there, so that's good. All right, okay, we'll touch back on Ali and Lisa in a little while. From Sunstone, a whole bunch of covers came out, and you were doing painted covers and.
I've been doing covers from way before Sunstone. I've been working on covers for. I did some Marvel stuff. I've done a crap ton of Zenescope stuff and Dynamite stuff and Top Cover. Yeah, I've done hundreds of covers so far.
So Suicide Squad.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Well, I mean, at some point, here's the thing. I don't really share my information online, so editors usually have a hard time of finding me. So at some point, one of the DC editors actually got a hold of my info and emailed me. It's like, listen, they actually wanted me to kind of contribute to some stuff before that. It was a Poison Ivy story for some sort of an annual thing. So I did that. And after that, things just started rolling in. I usually avoided bigger projects because I didn't really have the time for them or the interest. So I would just kind of take on random thing where it's like, oh, it's a single issue. Okay, give it here. Or, oh, it's just a few pages of a thing. Cool, I'll do that,
So who's your favorite Suicide Squad character to draw?
Oh, Harley.
Every time?
Oh, yeah, every time.
Every time? So yeah. I'll admit something right now. I am not a Harley fan at all in any shape, way, or form. Although
I'm a fan of Harley on a level as she could be written.
All right, I like that.
Harley is like, here's the thing: the concept of Harley behind how she's usually handled. She's kind of a slapstick thing or a sexy thing or just a thing that they put in a story. But the concept of Harley is actually far scarier than anything that's ever been done. She's a psychiatrist who is very much aware and can identify her own psychosis. Like she can literally understand what's wrong with her and is not doing anything, whether willingly or is unable, depending on how you handle the story about her. So Harley, if done properly, is one of the most interesting characters one could write about. So that's why I'm personally kind of leaning towards her as a character. I've always liked her.
I've got to say that I am enjoying her in Heroes in Crisis.
Mm-hmm.
So Tom King, I think, is doing a really good job on that. So from Suicide Squad, the man of many puns, Aquaman. You were there for a while.
Yes. Yep.
Everybody went bonkers of how great Mera looked, obviously. And of course, the whole idea was there going to be a love triangle between Arthur, Mera, and Dolphin. So again, what drew you to Aquaman? Because he's not exactly the most.
Very simple. Okay, so here's the easiest way to get me in a comic. you don't have to draw anything where you have to actually look for reference. What's that? I don't have to draw cars. I don't have to draw like real cities. I get to just make shit up as I go. I'm sold. I am sold. Literally that. Like, that's what got me to Aquaman. Literally, their pitch was, we're just going to keep it to Atlantis. It's going to be crazy stuff. You're going to have monsters. You're going to have underwater stuff, underwater cities. It's like, it's just going to be in the Atlantis. I'm like, we have a deal.
It's really funny because you say these things and you're a professional artist.
Yeah.
And when I doodle and sketch, I hate drawing the buildings and everything as well. So it's like, you know what?
I don't have a problem with buildings, though. Like, buildings are super easy. Like, I have a way of drawing these things that's really effective and fast and everything. No, my problem is when it's my worst case scenario is, for me, is like, we want you to draw New York. We want you to draw, Statue of Liberty. We want you to draw this specific bridge, And then I have to look for references. And it's like, oh, shit. If I draw it from this, then people are going to be like, well, that's somebody's photo, It's a legitimate thing to say, Yeah. So it's like, oh, fuck. I have to kind of mentally turn this thing around and just kind of draw it from a different angle without having a specific reference. It's always a tedium. Same as like, it's like, oh, and here's Bruce Wayne coming in Lamborghini something, I'm like, oh shit, I have to find references for that specific car. Can it not be just Batmobile? I can make you up a Batmobile.
No, we want this.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, that's really what sells me on a project. If it's something where I don't have to look for actual references, because that's when I work fastest. Then I just kind of like just throw it on the paper. I'm like, yep, done. Let's go.
So on Aquaman, you were working with Dan Abnett.
Yes.
The writer. What was that like?
Great. His scripting is very clear. He provides me with dialogues, and that's pretty much everything I need from a script. I can't work from a non-dialogue script because my work is very expression heavy. It's very gesticulation heavy. I want my characters to look like they give a crap about what's happening to them, So I demand dialogues in my script.
I want that. So no Marvel House way for you then? Eh?
No. That's, oh my God, if somebody brings me that, I'm just going to be like, yeah, there's the doors. Get the fuck out.
Fair enough. Okay. So things went a bit quiet for a while. Then, of course, came Justice League Odyssey. Now, I'm going to admit something, and I think I've tweeted you this in the past. The only reason I was buying this book, there's two reasons. One, I have a Jessica Cruz thing going on. I don't mind, put her in fishnets and I'm sold. No, I'm joking. I've got a Jessica Cruz thing going on, and your art, that was the only thing. When I look back at that book, I do not give a rat's about Cyborg. I have no idea what Asbats is doing on the bloody ship. Starfire I can take or leave. And I wasn't a big fan of the whole Source Wall Ghost Sector thing. So those are the two things that I'm buying this book for. Now, Jessica's hardly in it, and you're not in it anymore. It's like,
yeah,
jeez, man.
That book was a bit of it was a Murphy's Law in print kind of a thing, It's like
everything that could go wrong went.
Yeah, like we made two issues, but there was like a miscommunication between editorial departments, and at the same time, other big event was happening. I think, was it Metal or that? Metal was the thing that actually, and there was another thing that was being written, and that was kind of like the foundation books, and this was kind of an offshoot book. And we didn't really have the clear lines of communication somewhere. And what happened was we built the first two issues around a specific plot point where we couldn't even write around it. It's like sometimes you're gonna realize, oh shit, we gotta edit something. So we're gonna correct it in post, as they say. We're gonna just write around it. I'm gonna move a hand here and a head there. And we got it. No, this was like massive change. So after finishing two first issues, like I had my own very strict schedule for everything. So I had to I was at the same time trying to finish Sunstone Volume 6, Mercy first chapter for print. And, all of a sudden, this thing is derailing my schedule because like we finished the first two issues and then stop everything. We're going to continue really soon. We need to rewrite the script. We got to start from scratch. Okay. that's weird. Not the first time it happened. I've had that happen before in the book. So I'm like, okay, I guess we're gonna start soon. So I can't really focus on Sunstone because this is gonna get a script. But the thing is, that happened just before San Diego Comic-Con. And the comic book houses, they don't really work on San Diego Comic-Con time. So I ended up getting that script, quite later. And that cost me a month of time with Sunstone where I was doing nothing but expecting my script. And at that point, we started working on it again, and it was a kind of a touch and go situation where it's like, okay, do we get to use this? Do we get to do this? So it was a lot of small parts being removed and restructured and reformatted. And at that point, like I was finishing the first two books way behind of what I was having in my own schedules. Yeah. Sunstone's schedule was completely wrecked. I'm like, I can't. I'm sorry. And they were very understanding. Like they were like really happy that I at least stuck around for the first two issues until they could find a replacement. Because I'm like, it's not that I don't want to, it's that I literally got cornered now with other things.
It's cool. It happens.
Yeah.
I think the event was it No Justice? I think it was No Justice.
No Justice was just finishing, I think, and that was kind of an offshoot of that. And No Justice wasn't done when we actually started it, as far as I remember, something like that.
Yeah, cool.
Still, it's one of those.
Yeah, Dan Abnett's back on that book, so hopefully he'll turn it around a bit. But more Jessica Cruz is all I'm saying. And then that brings us bang up to date with Mercy. So I've had the privilege of checking out the book already. Hence, I'm a reviewer and we're talking to you guys, so that's cool. How did you find getting back into the world of Mercy? Because if Sunstone is that kind of that bounce back moment for you when you get back to something that you absolutely adore, your juices are flowing and you creatively and everything from that point of view, what's it like kind of getting back into that world?
Oh, there wasn't really getting back into it. I never really got out of it because I was writing behind the scenes and working on things, kind of putting all the small pieces, on the board so that I kind of know it's like, okay, this leads to this, this refers to this. I kind of had to get timelines right, and a lot of kind of pre-production work was being done on Mercy. And given the complexity of Mercy, I really had to get things, planned out. I couldn't wing it to a level where I could do it with Sunstone, because Sunstone was a very it didn't have a thing that it could fuck up. It's like Mercy. There's events in Mercy that are basically stuff that's been referenced in Sunstone, and they have to they have to happen at the right place at the right time, and they have to kind of refer to things in the right way. And so there was a lot of that, but getting into the story itself really was no problem. I did at some point take a break from it, but that was mostly because I decided to take about a month or two, no, it was about 2 or 3 months actually, to figure out and note out every aspect of every romance that happens through Mercy, because there's a very there's not a lot of coincidence in Mercy. Like when I write things in it, they're very intentional, even if they seem aloof. Like I will often make a joke that seems like a one-off joke, and then it has a massive payoff at a certain point later. And with Mercy, given the way it's structured, it required a lot of work, because Mercy isn't Sunstone. Alan and Anne's problems aren't the same as Ali and Lisa's. Otherwise, I wouldn't even write the book, because then I'm just retreading old ground and telling people the same lesson that they learn. And this is not it.
Okay, cool. Do you find that your art has changed at all?
Oh yeah, it's evolved immensely. I've grown far more subtle with my use of body language, expressions, far more comfortable. Also, Mercy, for instance, like Sunstone by design, really, but by the very nature of its characters, is a very indoorsy book. Ali and Lisa spend most of their time either in Ali's living room or in her special room or in the bedroom, or just sometimes at a coffee place. But with Mercy, I think you've noticed a lot of it takes place in open spaces, in concerts. There's a whole lot of characters, you know.
Yes.
Yeah, and that all comes with a level of comfort that I've gained over time with my work. So now it's just like it's far easier for me to produce a far superior looking book. So, you know, for this, Mercy is gonna surpass Sunstone on that level alone by a lot. As far as story goes, like I put in my foreword, Mercy is its own story. It is a fresh story. It's not supposed to be compared to Sunstone because, you know, if you compare,
it's like the same universe, but what happened before.
It's what happened before, what happened during, and what happened after. Mercy happens during a bigger time period. So it starts during college time, but it ends after, you know, Ali and Lisa get together and far past that point. So basically, at some point, you know, story catches up to the events of Sunstone, and then after that, story continues the events of Sunstone, but as a side thing. So, you know.
Cool. What was I going to say? So I've looking at the book. With the Mercy book, with it being predominantly this volume being predominantly in the past, I thought because I did compare the two art-wise.
Yeah, of course.
Sunstone seems, I guess, some of the figure work seems a bit more polished, if that makes sense. And in Mercy, it seems a little bit edgier in places. And I'm thinking to myself, is that because you're trying to set the scene that the characters themselves aren't fully formed yet? Because we've already seen.
No. Here's the thing. In Sunstone, most of them are just very sloppily drawn. But there are times when I actually did like more highly polished, realistic versions of the scenes, which were very intentional. You know, I kind of wanted those to be glory moments. Mercy hasn't gotten to that stage where I get to really revel in those. This is what I mean when I say.
I don't know. There's a couple of.
No, this is nothing. This is nothing comparatively to what happens next. This is very timid. Just you know, it is just the beginning of them. So that's the thing. Mercy will earn its moments. Mercy will earn its laughters, and Mercy will earn its tears from the audience. But it's going to earn so during the course of the story. And
I will say this. Yeah. Let me just say, because the comparison and contrast to the art in both books is fantastic. I mean, I'm talking. This is kind of looking at both books side by side and thinking, you know, it's. So the comment wasn't made as sort of like a disparaging thing. It's just kind of
no. I get you. I just wanted to make clear, you know, that it's not, you know, one of those. Oh no, this is a clever little thing. No, this isn't anything clever. This is just one book hasn't gotten to the point where I get to utilize the more high polish things, and the other one has reveled in it for a long time. You know, that's what I mean.
Okay, cool. With Mercy being such a longer time frame, then when I kept spotting the pictures on Deviant and some of the stuff on Twitter before the book came out, without the context, it was very much a case of, what's going on? And I was
you have no idea. You have no idea how many people are like, oh my God, this on Lisa. I'm like,
I was like, that was it. I was like, I was not going to death threat anybody or anything, but if you break Ali and Lisa up, I will, you know. I'm going to be writing some publishers.
Literally, the three main story arcs in the end converge in one event, and
that's all I'm saying.
That is like literally one whole book is going to be the final thing is going to be the wedding of Ali and Lisa.
Sweet. Absolutely. So I don't mind it. I don't mind that I know that, as long as I know that. I am so invested.
Listen. Here's the thing, though. Mercy, Sunstone, none of these books are about you knowing whether or not it ends happily. From the get-go, you do know, and that's what puts a stronger challenge for me as a writer to still make you cry and make you fucking care. You know, because that journey needs to be intense, and that's the thing. The journey of Sunstone was intense. The journey of Mercy is going to be intense over and over and over again just because of how it's structured. Because there's not a big spoiler if I say it. Mercy is a story about two people who, through their relationships in life, learn not to trust people. They learn, they gain scars, which, once you've had your heart broken that many times and that on that fundamental level, you kind of don't really let go of the past when you enter a new relationship, because you're kind of judging that person based on that, and that's going to be the problem that Ali and Alan have. Like the big lesson of mercy is, in order for you to have a chance at embracing your future, you got to learn to let go of the mistakes of your past.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the intense message of mercy that's going to be meticulously, built through about 11 books, I think. So yeah, it's going to be slightly longer than Sunstone.
I am so there. I look forward to seeing every one of those.
Oh yeah.
Okay. We'll take a bit of a step back.
Sure.
Your work is, I was going to say predominantly, but it's probably 100% digital. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely digital. I used to work constantly on traditional work, but the problem in Croatia is, let's say I want to draw a comic in Croatia for American market. I don't have the paper format here. We have European formats, so I would have to constantly cut things. Getting an A3 scanner that's worth a damn is next to impossible here. So in the end, I just gave up.
Okay, cool. What was it? Much of a transition to go from pencils and traditional?
Nah, it's the same thing. That's why people, when they see me painting digitally, they can't believe that I'm working predominantly on like 1 or 2 layers. They're like, "How are you doing?" Like, I'm a traditional painter.
Cool, excellent. Because of I've got a quick question then before I do that last one. Which do you prefer drawn? Superheroes, monsters, or bondage?
Which do I prefer drawing?
Yeah, which do you prefer? Do you like
conversations?
Well done. Good answer.
Yeah, honestly, like over the last few years, like it's become my obsession. Like I can draw you superheroes, I can draw you people punching planets, I can draw you bondage, and I can draw you monsters, devouring whatever. But the thing I've gotten obsessed about was just drawing pages of conversations and making people believe that these characters give a crap about what they're talking about.
Cool.
Like that's kind of become my own obsession.
Cool. Excellent. So comic books, no matter how hard we try to inject a level of alternative storylines and story ideas, it is always going to be predominantly a superhero world. Is that agreed? Who's your favorite superhero of all time?
Well, first of all, I disagree with the premise of predominantly being superhero. I am European after all. We do kind of have a very different approach to comics here. People from Japan would disagree also. But let's say for American market, which has kind of this over time kind of started identifying the concept of a comic with superheroes. So who would my favorite superhero be? Superman.
Superman. Okay.
Yeah.
How so?
Because he is pretty much the most human of them all.
Wow.
Like he is, like everybody else is kind of constantly getting into the super persona, Uh-huh. Well, he's just a guy from, he's just a Kent, he's just a guy from the village pretty much, He's got this super, you know what he is? He's Hannah Montana, okay? He's like this very regular person. Yeah, he's this regular person who really wants to just be a good person, and at the same time he is this thing that's greater than life itself, And how do you balance those things? This is what always fascinated me about Superman, Okay. Like each of these heroes kind of they have their own dichotomies, but I always enjoyed Superman the most.
Okay, cool. I kind of agree with you to an extent. I've been saying for a while that everyone talks about Batman. Batman is the real person. Bruce Wayne is the mask.
Yeah.
Superman, it's classic. Superman is definitely the mask, because Clark Kent, even without powers, would still want to try and do the right thing, because that's who he is. Yeah, it's nature versus nurture, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Clark Kent doesn't need an origin element. He doesn't need dead parents. He doesn't need a reason to help people. Clark Kent does it because he's a good person. And that's the core of Superman for me. And that's why I like him.
Excellent. Okay, last question. All right. Over the last couple of weeks, months, there has been a spate of Lara Croft and Wonder Woman images all over Twitter.
Yes, that is something that happened.
And
I seem to recall something similar. Yes.
And they are very funny, and they are very good. And what are the chances of fans getting to see a Lara Wonder Woman book?
Well, here's the problem with that. Like this is basically always the problem with these things is who owns the IPs. On one level, you have DC, you have Dark Horse. I think Dark Horse is publishing the Wonder Woman, the Lara Croft Tomb Raider stuff. However, at the same time, there's also the third element in it all, and that's Square Enix. They own the rights to Wonder Woman completely. So. It's one of those things where you have to have pretty much three sides deciding to actually get it done. And something tells me the chances are that the book wouldn't be what people who saw my stuff would want from it, Like, here's the thing. This whole thing originated when somebody kind of mentioned a possibility of a crossover like that, and to Gail Simone, and then she was like, it seems like a good idea for a book. I'm like, and I just commented, like, it's like, yeah, I could see a good adventure being done with that. And then Gail just asked me because, of course, she likes to mess with me, so she's like, I was like, yeah, but would they kiss? And I actually gave it a legitimate thought because that's kind of how my brain works as a storyteller. I'm like, okay, first of all, what is the concept of this story? Well, it is an adventure. It is a old school kind of an adventure. Now, you think every one of these adventures, like Indiana Jones, Alan Quatermain, all of these things, like they always kind of have that moment where the hero kisses the girl and stuff. I'm like, yeah, I mean, Wonder Woman is by Lara Croft. I wouldn't be surprised. Yeah, they would.
Of course they would.
And
she's got her own personal bondage tool there, Wonder Woman, so she's fine. She's sorted.
Like that's not the angle I would take with the thing. Here's the thing. I when I think about these things, like I legitimately. But it is like, okay, if that was a movie, I would do that kind of fades out, kind of a shot. It's like they kiss and that's it. It's that Indiana Jones 3 I Love Venice moment.
It's the classic James Bond ending.
Exactly. It's that element of the book. Like I always like that in movies because it's like, okay, you get the idea, now move on. It's not about that. It's fill the room. It's know your material. You're not making a smut book. You're making an adventure. This is what you get. You move on, and that's kind of my approach always to storytelling: is understand the material, understand the genre, and work within the confines of that, and try and inject as much humanity as you can in those characters, and you're golden.
Cool, excellent. So, Mercy, it's out March 20th. Is that right?
Yep.
It's available in print and on Amazon and Comixology and all the usual places.
200 pages of very mature content.
I will say this. I got my preview copy and I started reading it. I was reading it at work. Heads up, kids, it's not suitable for work.
Of course.
So I'm reading it at work, in my break, in my lunch, and I'm checking the page count. It's like 200 pages. I'm thinking I'm never going to get through this book at work. I'm just going to have to put it down. And then during my lunch hour, I hit the end of the book. I was like, what? Where's the rest of it? Where is the rest of this? I could not have done 200 pages of this already. And I checked. I was like, yep, that's 200 pages gone. That's how intense. And how
my favorite thing ever is when people come to a convention and they never read Sunstone and they decide to buy the first one. And I'm like, it's the first day of convention. I'm tomorrow. Like, why? Oh, nothing. It's just a hunch. Tomorrow they're like, what else do you have? These 4, there you go.
There you go. Get cracking. Excellent. Okay, so Mercy's out on March 20th.
Yes.
From Top Cow. Top Cow, is it?
Yep.
Top Cow.
Yep.
Top Cow. How's working with Mark Silvestri?
I wouldn't know. I don't really work with him. Like he's an artist. I'm an artist. We're both kind of in separate corners, as they say.
I'm curious because Mark Silvestri is one of my favorite.
Oh, he is great. Like as a person, he's great. I've spent time with the guy, and like it's always fun, you know.
I'm going to say something blasphemous in that I prefer his X-Men over Jim Lee's. So.
Yeah, me too. Sylvester has a very he has a very well defined approach to very very well defined look to characters that they always seem more monumental to me than Jim Lee. They're both like for me they're both on an equal level of quality. It's just certain characters I prefer seeing Mark doing.
They're both superstars by
oh yeah,
as are you, of course.
Oh no, I'm just a dabbler.
No way. Your stock is rising phenomenally. Your books look great. The writing's great. The writing in both Sunstone and Mercy, as we've said, transcends the more obvious attractions of both books.
You should give that visual a try.
I will search it out. I'll search it out.
Oh, yeah.
But one more question before we go, and it touches on your wife's book, Linda. I've got to get it wrong.
She's currently working on. No. She has finished Swing Volume 1 and did a certain amount of pages in Swing Volume 2, but she couldn't do the full Volume 2.
Okay.
Because she's right now working on. 4th volume of Bloodstein and developing a new project that she is going to be doing, which is currently being work name is Ponderworld, which is forever going to be named Ponderworld. So yeah.
Okay, interesting. How's it work? Because you two are both very creative.
Yeah. So here's how it works. Yeah, so here's how it works between us. We both we're working side by side. She's got her desk and I got my desk, and we're right next to each other. So what we do is we do our writing, sketching, and we lay things out, and then we're each other's first line of defense. So basically, a book has to pass. My book has to pass her criteria, and her book needs to pass my criteria for it to actually, for us to actually go to finishing phase. Okay. Whatever is done, it always has to go. Like I need her input. Does the book flow well? Does the dialogue flow naturally? Does this work? Same from her to me.
Okay, cool, interesting, excellent. Okay, thank you for that little snapshot. Yeah. That's it. Thank you very much. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your schedule. I will say, as I said before, and I've said previously, I am a huge fan. It's been an absolute honour and a pleasure speaking to you today. Thank you.
Thank you. It's been fun.
All right, guys. Don't forget to check out the UCPN for all the rest of your favourite podcasts, including more Outside the Panels that you can shake a stick at, the Definitive Crusade, and of course, the No Prize Podcast. All right, this is Johnny the Machine Hughes saying see ya.
Visit undercovercapes.com for the latest and greatest podcasts via the Undercover Capes Podcast Network. Also visit our parent company website, comiccrusaders.com, all about comic pop culture.